The dollar is getting stronger for some very awful motives. That means horrific in terms of the macroeconomy. What likely lies in advance, what is probably telling us. But this is a conundrum for a lot of people because they look at it. The USA objectively, our debt to GDP ratio is over 130%, highest in US records. Lots of research coming from obviously Ken Rogoff, but certainly Carmen Reinhardt, Vincent Reinhardt and others, but many others, not just them, that asserts that those debt to GDP ratios you cannot grow. You may maybe refinance and litter through, but it always ends either in default. That is unlikely because we are able to print the money, that an awful lot is real, or intense inflation, where, right here's your $1 trillion lower back. Top good fortune buying a loaf of bread. So we'll see how that plays out. However, the way it's far gambling out in actual time is that the United States monetary growth is distinctly susceptible. So we're given excessive sky-high debt to GDP ratio. Human beings communicate unemployment near an all-time low. Yeah, but even at 5% or so, this is extraordinarily low. I suggest I am going back to the 60s and that become low by way of the measures of the 60s. But that completely ignores in all likelihood 8 to 10 million individuals who have been flawlessly able of getting jobs and working primates 25 to 54 years antique who aren't in the workforce. That measure's picked up in hard work pressure participation price, which is low. That peaked around 70% in 2000, up from the 70s. And that was girls coming into the body of workers and different factors. But now it is all the way down to around 62% and change. It ticked up a bit within the ultimate file. However, it is still extremely low. It's in no way 100. I suggest you may be a homemaker, a pupil. They're retired, early retirees. There are quite a few motives humans aren't inside the body of workers. However, not taking 10% off or 14% decline from the starting vicinity in over 2 decades. So in case you throw the ones humans into they're now not known as unemployed because they are not searching out jobs, but in case you threw them in, unemployment could be in the direction of 10%. That is a recession or depression degree. Genuinely, and I ought to go on. But the factor is there are all styles of symptoms of weak point if we have the deficit. Deficit is out of control, and your J deficit is out of manage. So what is no longer to like? You have a look at all that you say, what? Are you kidding me? I suggest, get me out of the dollar. Get me. Get whatever else. Why is the dollar so strong? And the answer is for this you need to go behind the curtain. You have to investigate what's called the plumbing of the international financial machine. And that I had a discussion, and this is going lower back. That is 1980s. So I'm a young, up-and-coming VP of Citibank. It is back inside the days when it changed into a financial institution, earlier than they became it right into a hedge fund. I am like a 27 or something, a 28, perhaps 12 months antique legal professional. However, I am speaking to Walter Wriston. It is a one-on-one communique. For individuals who don't know the call or don't take into account, he was possibly the second finest banker of the 20th century, after Pierpont Morgan. So I will give Morgan the prize. However, he lived around 1910s, and Wriston became the inventor of the euro greenback. Also the negotiable certificates of deposit. Eurodollars are around a touch bit in advance. However, he took the CD that turned into your hobby within the euro greenback and made them negotiable and tradable. So I'm having a verbal exchange with him, and that I had just visible this movie. It is called Rollover, and it's again 1980s. It is essentially about the disintegrate of confidence inside the US dollar, and essentially the concept changed into, keep in mind, that is all through the Arab oil embargoes and the Iranian oil embargo, and rate of oil quadrupled in 8 years and all that. So the subject matter changed into the Arabs are taking the money out of the banking machine and shopping for gold, and they are stashing the gold away. And this is the collapse of the economic device. That was sort of the plot. So I stated, Mr. Wriston, what approximately that all people took their money out of the machine and purchased gold. Wouldn't that disintegrate the gadget? And he checked out me like I was a brand new child at the block, which I was. And he said properly, what you need to understand is that you may take your cash out of the financial institution and you may purchase gold. However, the person who bought you the gold were given the money, and that they placed it lower back in the bank, so it does not go anywhere. It is a closed circuit. And of path, now I'm like, oh yeah, you're proper. Of path, he is right. And he said, so the stableness of the machine does not rely on who sells what for bucks. Yeah, it impacts alternate rates a touch bit and hobby prices for the fee of gold. However, he stated, the cash always, it cannot literally disappear. It has to move returned into the machine. It is a closed circuit, and of course, it is how the Euro greenback system works. However, it presupposes that you could usually borrow inside the Eurodollar marketplace. In different phrases, that closed circuit analogy is correct. Furnished, the big banks are willing to lend to each other. So if my example, if United States of America was promoting the gold into the Arabs, and that they got the money and they positioned it again in Citibank Nassau, it's all correct. However, what occurs if that money supply? Now I am speaking about Eurobucks, clearly shrank. And that may be a heart attack inside the global economic system. So now we are like, nicely, what's happening? And agree with it or no longer. There is a international dollar scarcity. And while you say that, humans say, wait a second, you kidding me? The Fed printed the Fed stability sheet in 2008 at the begin of the global financial crisis, became $800 billion. It changed into $4.5 trillion by the time we got to the give up of the taper in November 2014. Then K yelling a little bit. But mostly, Powell got it. They started quantitative tightening. They were giving it back off to round 3.5 trillion by the time COVID came alongside. And then boom, it is as much as 7.5 trillion. Would possibly have long gone better than that. And that is M0. M1 became exploding even more. So how may want to there be a dollar shortage? And that has a two-element solution. One is the cash printing. At least M0 is beside the point. It just does not rely. Because how do they print the money? Nicely, the Fed buys securities from the primary dealers, and after I left Citibank, I joined one in all the biggest number one sellers, and I was there for 10 years. So I had the front row seat. That become back inside the days while the Fed became genuinely tough on people. But my point is, I used to be a counsel, a primary supplier. We talk to the Fed each day, and so the primary dealers are those where the Fed open market does. The Big Apple Fed does financial policy. They purchase so that they name up Goldman Sachs or Metropolis or whoever to provide, understand 5YR notes or 2-year notes or something. Here's a price. Carried out. The banks send the securities to the Fed, and the Fed will pay for it with cash that comes out of skinny air. However, here's the component that subjects. What do the banks do with that cash? They provide it again to the Fed inside the form of excess reserves. The bank deposits on the Fed. In effect, that cash by no means went everywhere. It changed into created. It's miles on the stability sheet. However, it all went to the asset side, which had been securities. And it never went into the economy. So where does the money come from that runs the financial system? If you or I need to go shop, it comes from the economic banks. Yeah, there's a multiplier. However, that is an M1 and M2, which is created by the banks at will. And those commercial banks have as a great deal printing strength as the Fed.